Hello and welcome to Skeleton Songs.
Skeleton Songs release candidate 1.1.B.11.final.2.final.release.
We are on the cusp of an actual release. This is Friday, we are recording this. You will not hear this until the Monday following the Friday because weekends are angelic. But we are launching Travelling on Night's demo on Steam on Monday. So we are not doing a final brackets 2 version.
No, we're not. And actually, we had the release candidate, that is to say, the version that we would be happy to release if we don't change anything else, ready on like Tuesday. And we've been doing bug fixes and we're getting bugs, but we've been in closed beta for 3 weeks. So you get this real...
More like a month.
More like a month. So, but it's like a kid bouncing on a trampoline. The first jump's really high, and if they're calming down, each jump is calmer. So the first set of bugs included things like it won't let me travel to the area that ends the demo, or I get stuck in an infinite loop in conversation.
The cursor's on fire.
Or the what?
Cursor? We had some issues with the cursor being a sort of tiny, minuscule rainbow
there were two
pain.
things. We found the cursor, the custom cursor that we used, didn't render properly on Mac or Linux. Thank you to our Mac and Linux testers. And then the initial fix worked on Mac, but it was really, really comically tiny on the Retina screen. So
we thought we'd spend the next hour just listing bugs that we fixed. And
we've
might be fun.
got something called the Black Museum, which is...
Want to explain the origin of the Black Museum?
Yeah, they don't call it the Black Museum anymore because obviously in the 21st century that sort of implies something vaguely racial. But it's now called the Museum of Crime, and it was Scotland Yard's museum, not open to the public, made available for the training of police officers, that contained relics from various crimes that they could study in order to understand the ways of the criminal mind.
Fascinating.
So our Black Museum is a little repository of bugs worth recording. And the nice thing that happened accidentally is our in-game bug reporter combines a colour or a metal with a flower or a fruit. So whenever somebody sends us a bug, it's called something like Dysprosium aprillum or Jade Snowdrop. Jade Snowdrop is a particularly bastard one, actually. So I've got a folder full of these things that I can reference later that all have rather attractive and mythic sounding names. But, you know, if one bug took a lot of time to squash, it's nice to keep track of what it was. So if its kin pops up later, then you basically got a vaccine against it. But yeah, I think we're ready to go.
But it's been ages since we've done a podcast because we've been working. I think we've worked harder than we've ever worked, honestly. Seriously. At Weather Factory. We the last massive kind of crunch that we did was to get Book of Hours' demo ready for Steam Next Fest back in what must have been February 2023. Because basically we sort of didn't understand how Next Fest worked, so we sort of fell into it and realised that we had to put out this demo, and actually it was quite important. Whereas now, at least, we're putting out a demo super early. It's not Next Fest, it's just we want to get something out there. And we have some fun stuff coming next week, or today, if you're listening to this on Monday. But yeah, we've been doing ridiculous hours, which, you know, we shouldn't glamorise, but we are really enjoying ourselves, and we do care very much about making this game as good as we can. And to see how far it's come, just from the first beta to the demo now, you know, this is still a game that is not complete. So if anyone is playing it, in the demo, you'll notice some things that we're probably going to fix by the time we get to the demo. Things like UI polish and things like, you know, Spencer occasionally can end up in a chair and not sitting down, literally in a chair. Or a
stuck
car.
In the corner.
No, I fixed that one. But to see the huge difference that actually putting it in the hands of players to tell us things that they, you know, that either they didn't like, that we're like, oh, we thought they wouldn't like it, but now we'll fix it, or things that we never thought would be a problem, like the minuscule cursor on Mac, or, you know, there's one person who doesn't like the texture of the dialogue window because there's something that looks a bit like a hair, and I actually think that's a really decent bit of feedback, because if it has annoyed this person, it's going to annoy, you know, a percentage of anyone else.
Well, I was going to say, go on. Sorry.
I just think, I'm really proud of the last month of work. I think the game has benefited hugely from it. It feels like a different game now.
It does.
And you are not you're very good at recognising practicalities. You know that you have to put games out for people to play at some point, which is this difficult tipping point in the artistic trajectory, right? Lots of artists really struggle with that, and they kind of want to keep it personal and keep it private and work on it because it's never perfect. So you're good at knowing that you need to do that, but I wouldn't say that you're normally happy or calm about any sort of release, and you are the calmest I've seen you be about this. And it doesn't mean that everything's going to go swimmingly. You never know what's going to happen on launch, but I think that you have real faith in the stability and quality of the demo because we've been looking at it for a month.
Quality, who can say? Stability, yes. And like I said,
That's the spirit.
With the bugs earlier, they started out quite critical, and the ones you got recently, somebody did get stuck in a bookshop corner, but most of the things like double spacers, or the music plays a bit weird in this one spot because we've what have we had? 4 waves of testers?
5.
We keep sort of unleashing a new wave of testers because every time we send out
Fly,
keys,
my pretties.
Some people just won't even open the game. Some people install it and mean to get around to it. Some people will send us an enthusiastic cluster of really useful bug reports, but even the really keen ones won't keep going back and playing every patch. And even the really keen ones who keep going back and playing a couple of patches won't be playing the game for the first time, so it'll be a different set of responses.
Yes.
So this is one of the things we learned, is you stagger your waves of testers rather than releasing 80 keys at once. 3 bits of game dev wisdom, I guess. One is the difference between overwork and crunch. So crunch is unsustainable overwork, and all my experience and all the advice is basically you can work beyond your hours, especially if you're not 21 anymore, for...
Which fortunately both of us are.
a couple of weeks. 1 week is preferable, sometimes it goes to 2. Whether you're working overtime because you are a highly motivated indie in your own, or because your company is paying you overtime, or because somebody has begged and pleaded with you to play overtime, or threatened you, after a couple of weeks your productivity just drops off. And I think I was doing... Basically, it was 3 weeks of 6-7 hour days, and
6 or 7 hour days.
Sorry, 6 or 7 day weeks. I apologise.
Bonkers. And 12-hour days.
And by halfway through week 3, I was getting notably ratty.
It was notable that you changed as a person over the course of it, and this is something that we both really love. We love the day to day. It's not super fun fixing bugs all the time, but we are really artistically fulfilled by this project and love it. And even with that starting point, you notably got unhappy and actually ill. You actually made yourself quite sick. So
but then I stopped. But I think that's a real starting point for sensible discussions about this stuff. Is overtime is not crunch, but overtime can turn into crunch, and I think 2 weeks is the heuristic limit depending on circumstances.
Well, and I think also the conversation about crunch normally assumes that the majority of people doing the crunch are doing it because they've been told to do it, whereas you and I are choosing to do it because we enjoy it. Whereas a lot of the crunch conversations are about employees who feel obligated by their bosses to work these unsustainable hours that they didn't sign up for, and maybe they get compensated, but that doesn't change the fact that you miss birthdays and time with your family and yada yada. So there's a big difference between somebody personally saying this is my passion project, it's not the healthiest thing, but I need to get it for 2 weeks, so I'm just going to do it.
And just because it's practical to do overwork for 2 weeks, and doesn't mean it's ethical to make somebody do overwork for 2 weeks.
No.
And I remember a long time ago reading a doctor saying, what you have to bear in mind is that your bank account is a number, but your health is also an account. It might not be easily expressible with the number, but you are using your resources. The stress you experience in your 30s will not just disappear forever. You are deciding which particular candle you're going to burn.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I thought I said it before.
No. Why are you keeping these pearls of wisdom from me?
Well, I'm just so full of wisdom, Lottie. I'm like the world's biggest oyster, but much easier to open. The other thing I was going to say is it is an article of faith, but it surprised me every time. The things you worry about are not the things that testers pick up on, or play testers, or feedback. Some of it obviously, sure, if you're concerned that the save system is a bit wonky, then probably there'll be people complaining about their saves disappearing. But they come back with stuff you just didn't think of. So, for example, I mentioned earlier that in the very first patch you actually couldn't reach the final area of the game. And that's because I built in quite a robust system that removes content that shouldn't be available yet from the game in order to prevent people data mining it and issuing spoilers.
We do
or
have
making
some eager fans who,
Yes.
I'm very pleased that they are interested as much as they are, but who make our job slightly more difficult by data mining,
especially
by
because
seeking out.
I'll put placeholder content in,
things,
and there've been occasions in the past people have thought this was the final content
Yeah,
to make.
these people have got much worse at their jobs.
Yeah. But you end by going to the second city in the game, and basically I've taken all the content of the second city out automatically, so you couldn't reach it. So I put the relevant bit back in. But yeah, players never come back with the things you expect. That was everything in the game was in that system was working great. It was just working a bit too well, so I needed to fix it. And the third thing I was going to say is I guess flattering to you, which is that we had a typical big picture, small picture disagreement about when we were going to do the open beta. And you said you wanted to do it next week because there's an event that's useful for marketing purposes.
You mean demo?
So the demo, yes.
We've announced it, so we can talk about it. We're in the Choices Matter Festival that's being hosted by Telltale, who of course are well known for narrative games and are much bigger than us. And they emailed us a couple of months ago to say, do you want to join? To which the answer is obviously yes, please. So that put a hard deadline in a way that you and I don't normally have on this deliverable. And then we ended up, as you say, in this classic cycle where I, from the marketing point of view, was saying, well, look, we get all these bonuses if we put out a demo in time to capitalise on this opportunity that we can't change the date of. And you, understandably, were saying, well, from the development point of view, that's earlier than we anticipated, and can we do it, and yada yada.
And how many wish lists is it going to be, and is it worth it, and what's the hidden cost?
Exactly.
But what resolved it for us, and I'm really happy with this, is initially it was more stressful, but you said if we're putting out a demo on the 10th of August, we need to open the closed beta. We need to make the closed beta available like beginning of July so that we get real testing. And I said, oh, crikey, well, I was thinking in terms of August. July is probably too soon. And we had a bit of an impasse, and what dissolved it was realising that, it sounds obvious after you've said it, we could put a much shonkier version of the game into the closed beta than we could in the demo.
Yeah.
So I was thinking initially, crikey, the game needs to be ready for the demo at the beginning of July, and it didn't, of course. It needed to be ready for a small population of motivated testers.
I mean, we're talking literally 20 people here. We're not talking about thousands.
That's it.
The big thing about a demo is that theoretically, I mean, we will not get this amount of attention, but theoretically everybody on Steam will be able
don't even say that.
to play.
Seriously.
No, you see, we like success. Success is our friend. We want these people to play.
Modest success.
You see, this is
it
what I
doesn't
have to
require
work
my
with.
spine to be replaced.
But you take my point. Don't worry, we will never achieve that level of success. I promise you a certain healthy amount of failure.
But
also, I've been looking into
the
stats.
footfall's the Wendigo.
And again, I know this freaks you out because you're not thinking with marketing.
Did you say stamps? You'd be looking
Stats.
to stats. Oh, right.
Stats. No, stamps are not my thing. Neither are stats, really. Anyway, my point was that, you're getting ready for this big demo. We're both getting ready for this big demo. Theoretically, so that theoretically everyone on Steam can play it. But firstly, a percent of the whole Steam user base is even going to know that travelling at night is a thing. And secondly, even the people who actually go to the page and download the demo, I think it's something like 40% of those people are going to play it ever.
Yeah.
Most people who download a demo don't play it. It might be even something like 20% of people who download it end up playing it. And that doesn't mean that therefore you can, just fart out anything, because we have our professional pride, and obviously we want actually people to play it and think, you know what, this has amazing potential. I've never played anything like it. This is great. That would be the ideal, and we are working for a demo of that quality. But my point is that there is more Horatio than just let's put out a build that we will then be judged on forever. And this is why marketing and dev buck heads all the time, because sometimes one is just right over the other, but sometimes there are totally different levels, different paradigms, as a certain leader of the Green Party
this
would
is
say.
the in the business on the business thing that we always say is that it's different perspectives, and it's very hard to decide which perspective is right, especially when you're married to the other perspective.
It's true.
Flipping Sony.
Yes, you had a bit of a bad morning, didn't you?
I did. So, as we may have mentioned earlier, we're 3 days away from the from the public demo.
2 of those days being weekends.
2 of those days being weekends, and which might not work. And
which we don't want to work. And we're committed to not working.
The future is an illimitable ocean.
When was the last weekend that you didn't work? For the viewers?
The future is an illimitable ocean. The past is a darkened vault.
The past confirms how many weekends you've worked, actually. But go on, tell me about your bad morning.
So we got an email from one of our testers, who's also System Talk, a stream with whom we have a very positive relationship, and he said, probably nothing, because I know you're careful about use of public domain music and you do your homework, but I did get a copyright claim from Sony Music for a couple of 1940s songs that you put in the game. And I thought initially, oh, Norman, you're easily frit. Of course I done my homework. And then I went away and looked it up, and I hadn't done enough of my homework. Now, the context here is Django Reinhardt, enormously talented swing jazz manouche guitarist from the first half of the century, despite having taught himself to play guitar and only having how many fingers?
3.
3
on the left hand where you hold the fret. That's what drives me insane. I'm a guitarist, not a very good one, but I can play the guitar, and the idea of playing the chords with only 3 fingers is insane.
So Django has a sort of peripheral relevance to the story, in that your character was in Paris in the pre-war years, that's connected with his memories and his social life and all the rest of it. And one of the very first bits of content, the first conversation I wrote, and one of the first bits of that conversation, is you have a conversation with somebody while there's a radio on in the background. You can say, oh, is that Django Reinhardt? And the guy you're talking to says, it is. And you're like, but I don't recognise that piece. And he's like, what, you don't recognise this famous piece, Nuages, Clouds, which is the anthem of the French under occupation by the Nazis, and proved to be an enduring, beautiful, wistful treasure in the years since, but yet sounds at once immediately identifiable as Django, but unlike all Django's other stuff, because he does this very fast bum 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 pump rhythm, but Nuages is do 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 do, and your character says, oh, thank you for the exposition there and for placing this important piece of music in the context of France recovering from the wounds imposed by occupation. I'll give you a small relationship boost for having recognised it. So
that's not happening, is it?
No, it's not happening. So the conversation's still there, but I made a boo-boo because I thought that Django's work was public domain because he's been dead since 1953, and Nuages was recorded in 44, 46, I don't know. Turns out it's public domain in the EU and in Canada, but it's not public domain in the US until 2037 or something. And the particular recording I used, which was a 1960s pressing of a private concert that Django gave to a rich enthusiast, isn't public domain in the US until I think 2064. And I know games get delayed, but I didn't think Lottie would look kindly upon.
No, I'm not happy about that.
So
that was a bummer.
It was a bummer, and
thanks,
not even
System Talk.
So. And the thing is, I'd really thanks System Talk for flagging us before Sony emailed us and says, give us $100,000 or we want your company.
Well, because I've tangled with Sony before. We haven't been sued by anybody, but back when we were making Book of Hours, we were looking at trailer music, and we both found this bardcore version of Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill, which fit a lot of the themes really nicely, and we just liked the idea that there would be this really famous song but presented in an appropriate way. So I did this sort of ridiculous dance where I spoke to the guy who'd actually done the performance and said, can we use this in a trailer? And he said, sure, but you've got to ask my production company. So I went to the production company and said, can I use this man's music? And they said, sure, but you've got to ask Kate Bush. So I went to Kate Bush and said, hey, Kate Bush, can we use this cover of your music? And the Kate Bush people were like, sure, but maybe just check with Sony. And then I waited like 2 months for Sony to be like, I'm sorry, who are you again? And what's a video game? And then they were like, nah. So I'm not keen on either being sued by Sony or going through the process of asking them for permission, because my vague sort of sense, having brushed paths with them before, is that they don't really get out of bed unless you're Warner Brothers. So they just think you can use another piece of music and get stuffed.
Yeah,
And
this is the thing: is you know, you said quite reasonably, well, can you not use just another piece of jazz manouche?
Because it's such a clear style. There's lots of other music, especially lots of other royalty-free music, in very clearly the style of Django Reinhardt. But you, from a narrative point of view, said...
Well, yes. I threw a gigantic tantrum and hurled my quill pen to the floor and stamped around the room crying.
And I literally went out and bought a sandwich.
Yeah. But the problem was I'd really put myself in the box, the writing, because specifically it was... Here was... I wouldn't recognise if I didn't know Django had written Nuages, I wouldn't realise it was Django because it's really not very dissimilar.
Yeah.
And any other piece, Django piece, you'll recognise. Boom, 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 boom.
It's boom changa, boom changa.
Boom changa, boom changa. And but so there's a whole specific conversation where you and this other guy bond because you're enough of an aficionado, if you pass the skill test, to recognise that even though it doesn't sound like Django, maybe it's a Django piece you haven't heard. So, you know, good luck finding an alternate piece that sounds like Django but not Django is identifiable by the quality and particular minutiae of the guitar work in a dramatically relevant context. So in the end I just took it out. You don't get the music playing in the background when it goes on because we could have probably paid $5,000
in 6 months.
In 6 months. If we were lucky to license them. I looked into, it's possible to
But again, I think they just say no.
I think they just say no.
Or never get back to us.
Yeah, or never get back. But I thought we could hire like a jazz manouche quintet to play it. And yeah, we could have, except of course, US copyright law means that very briefly, the copyright of the composition expires 95 years after the first publication of the composition. So I think we'd only have to wait until about 2036 for that.
But so ultimately you murdered
So
even
if we commissioned an original recording, then we'd still get sued by not even Sony. It's a different company that owns the rights to that. So I went all round this. I murdered my darling, basically being a writer. You're like sort of miniature Herod. Wading in the blood of the innocents every morning.
That's tough being you, darling.
It is tough being
never have to change anything about our work, so I can't imagine how it feels.
I nearly said something sort of sardonic and dismissive, and I thought maybe I wouldn't.
You had a difficult morning, and I'm very sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, I was at the same time very aware that I was being quite self-indulgent about it.
You weren't saying that this stuff matters to you, I know.
It does matter to me.
This is in the business.
But the self-indulgent bit was like I say, literally almost the first bit of conversation I wrote in the game, if not the first. And it was the same to lose it, and it sort of wound its way into the other bits. There's memories and plot threads and details about listening. I did loads of research about which clubs Reinhardt played in Paris. And I moved the club where you'd heard him 3 times, as I realised that actually the one of the Rue Pigalle he didn't play until later in his career. And then I wanted to use Chez Bricktop because it's got this fantastic. It's called Chez Bricktop because there's this African American lady who came over to Paris and started the club, and she had this sort of brilliant crest of I think dyed red hair.
I didn't know she was African American. I thought she was a natural ginger.
No. Maybe she's just a really old genetic mix and had ginger, but I think it was dyed.
Yeah. No, that makes more sense.
But yeah, she was a black lady running a jazz bar in Paris in the 1930s.
Cool.
So there's your history right there.
I don't think we're going to lose any of that. I know today's been annoying, but I think all of that will be useful.
I think you're right. It is still useful. It's all still in the game. It's just
such cool texture.
I just wanted to have the track actually playing over the discussion of it, and I can't do that now unless I pay lots of money. Yeah. So, but look, we'll tell you what you do, folks. If you're playing the game, when you get to the point where where Spencer is talking to Matties, pause the game, go to YouTube, find a recording of Nuages, mute the music. The music's very good. The our in-game music that JW from Public Service Broadcasting did, but mute it briefly, listen to Nuages, get the feeling, move on. So the actual music that I think we'll be playing in the background is the Incorporates track.
It always gives me the giggles.
It literally makes us laugh.
It's so good. I think we should talk about that briefly because
you talk.
We watched we're both big fans of Tom Stoppard, who is one of the most brilliant modern playwrights, I think. And we went and saw a production of one of. And we went and saw a production of, what was it called?
The Real
Thing. And this opens with these actors on stage, right? You're sitting there and thinking, I didn't know anything about it other than it was Tom Stoppard play. So I was sitting there and I was thinking, this is enjoyable. I'm not sure it's his best play. And it goes on for like 20 minutes before it's revealed to you that the actors are performing a play within a play and it's supposed to be bad. And the absolute cojones of a playwright cold opening an actual play without telling you that it's supposed to be bad and just expecting the audience to sit there and think, oh, maybe Tom's fallen off the perch a bit, and then revealing that it's deliberately bad and then the rest of the play is as brilliant as you expect it's going to be. Really marked me. I just thought that was so bold and amazing. And I've literally got so excited about Tom Stoppard, I've forgotten what we were talking about.
About a chicken in every pot. The incorporates.
Yes, and the incorporate. Right, okay, so the reason that we're mentioning this thing is the incorporates are in world comparison or alternate America in 1948. So they have an extremely charming and possibly morally dubious representative. They have a lot of money. They're very interested in money and capitalism. And with that comes a lot of good things, but with it also comes maybe some bad things. And they are kind of the polar opposite of our alternate version of the USSR, called the
Ministries.
The Ministries, who are sort of spooky and a bit kind of ideologically driven rather than materially driven.
But they are both divisions of material plenty. That's the whole thing. But when we were giving direction to JW, I think what I said was the incorporate vision is sort of Aaron Copland and Appalachian Spring on the one hand, and sweeping majestic fields of evergreen, and also a chicken in every pot and an electricity to every house.
So chicken in pot is exactly
and
the vibe.
The ministries are carrying this sort of vision of material prosperity and enlightenment into the burning red and silver future. And the particular reference I had in mind, I didn't actually tell JW to afterwards, I didn't want him to go in the wrong direction, is sorry for the divagation, John Adams's Nixon in China mid-century opera, which is a fantastic track called, I think, The People Are Heroes Now, which was used on like the Civ 4 soundtrack, which is this real sense of rising destiny in China. So I wanted the same sort of thing. So he used Stravinsky, Mussorgsky.
But you're getting confused. This is the Ministry, right?
I am. We're talking about the incorporates.
So the reason that we're mentioning the incorporates is because, like the Tom Stoppard play, the incorporate track deliberately starts with the actually out of key kind of brass riff that sort of slowly loads in this sense of kind of mass and seriousness and it's really kind of like slow, powerful stuff. And initially you're listening to it and you're like, is this supposed to sound like this? But it's just subtle enough that you're not sure. And then it comes in with this like really jaunty guitar riff.
Banjo.
It's not a banjo.
Oh, is it not? I'm sorry.
It's a guitar riff, and immediately it sounds chicken in every pot. It's got these, it's all major chords, and it sounds like aggressively positive in the same way that if you imagine watching a kind of American corporate video welcoming you into the folds of the employees, that's the soundtrack. So every time I listen to it, it really gives me the giggles because it's so perfect for what we want the incorporates to represent, which is not, they're actual shysters and they're full of nonsense, but there are these two things going on at once, one is which basically selling this sort of impossible American dream, and one of which is actually loads of really cool good things that they have managed to achieve. And the music's very funny, but I'm slightly nervous in case people listen to it and are like, this sounds a bit on the nose, but it's supposed to be. So over the course of the game, I think people will pick it up happily, but it does tickle me.
It's ticklish. You're ticklish. We're all ticklish. Say something intelligent.
It's a Friday before the demo. What have I been doing? I've been drawing a lot of drinks. We've been drawing pasty. I don't know if anyone listening to this can think of and visualise what a pasty looks like. I had to look it up.
Not a Cornish pasty.
Not a Cornish pasty. This is a pastis, Pastis, which is a popular French, is it liqueur with water?
I don't know if it counts as liqueur, but it's sort of like, how can I put this? Temu absinthe. It's wormwood flavoured. It's weaker than absinthe,
but it's alcoholic.
But it's aniseedy,
and you mix it with water,
and it's alcoholic. Yeah,
and it's a classic sort of rustic French.
And
drink.
the wonderful fact is, louche, which we in English know as a term meaning sort of seedy in an interesting way, and a bit low class, started out as it's what pastis and I think also absinthe do when you pour them into water. They louche It's the process of going cloudy with a combination with the water.
Looshing. You've been doing, well, we've just been given a gift, a segue from the world. You won't know this because it will have been most excellently edited, but we keep having to stop this podcast while a plane very noisily flies over our flat, which segues quite nicely into what you've been spending the afternoon doing.
Yes, because as you know, the world is burning, so normally we close the door when the planes are flying over, but you have to keep it open, or you just hear this sort of desiccated rattle as our bodies finally collapse.
And a happy Friday to you too.
What am I doing this afternoon? Well, first of all, I went and found some public domain recordings for Diegetic Radio in the cafe, but that's the other thing. I spent 10 minutes whinging about how I had to take Nuages out. I also had to take Darktown Strutter's Ball out because the recording of it is owned by Sony, although the composition is the public domain. But I couldn't track down a good composition, so I found some basically period music, cleaned it up as best as I could, and then you hear it when you go into the cab.
I think it sounds good.
I think it sounds good, actually. I'm surprised how good it sounds. It's a nice contrast to the menacing music that JW put in for Antibes. I just have to talk about this briefly, actually, because nobody has commented on it. I don't know if anybody's noticed it. And we, particularly JW, put out in a ridiculous amount of work. Antibes is a city of two halves. There's a literal Terminator in the astrophysical rather than the cybernetic sense, a line between light and dark crossing the centre of it, so you can walk from rain into sunshine for metaphysical reasons that you can adduce once you're across it, into the sunnier half of Antibes that's more like the Riviera we know, and less like the war-wrecked, pus-scarred relic which you go into. And each of these sides has its own track, and when you cross from one side to the other track starts. It doesn't start from the beginning, though. No. It starts from the exact point that you leave off the first track. And this required, on my part, quite a lot of jiggery-pokery to make sure that this lined up with the music changing when you different bits of Antibes, like into the cafe, or when you went into the another interior location and came out again, that it didn't get mixed up when you crossed the line. But JW had to do the real work in that he had to make sure that both tracks were the exact same length, and at any point you cross from one to the other, then it feels like you are moving between two different versions of the same themes. That's gorgeous. But yeah, sound effects. I put loads of sound effects in the game. We didn't have any sound effects. There was like one button that clicked, and I finally got around to doing it. So I went to my favourite minimal cost sound effect site, the one that so I'm not a sound engineer, and actual sound engineers can tell. People who aren't will sort of notice something's not ideal, but not really tell. We got some pros to do our sound effects for Book of Hours, and we will go back and get pros to do the actual sound effects of the final game. But what we've got is just now that you don't think you've turned the volume off, and the biggest problem with them is that trying to make them sound that they're all coherently of a piece is tough, and I've done my best, but my best means that my wife turned to me this morning and said, so I've been playing the game with the sound effects, and am I a magical girl now?
It does sound quite a lot like how I'd expect Sailor Moon to sound if Sailor Moon fell in a bath full of unusual orchestral instruments. But we're going to
turn it down. It's hard to tell because the game's been really quiet for us for ages.
That's the
so
thing.
It sounds super tatty.
Exactly.
But I'm sure Steam will let us know.
And one of the things at this point of the demo, because the content of Antibes, so I mean the narrative, the writing, the interactions, that's all complete. The art is all complete. The animations are complete. They need a little second pass, but they're all in there. So all the kind of core of the game is there. But what isn't there, and what we are currently working on, is improving the game feel. Now that sounds like a sort of arty-farty thing, and in a way it is because you can't exactly quantify it. But game feel would include things like sound effects. So sure, when you hover over a button, you'd expect it to look differently. And when you click on a button, you'd expect to have an immediate response from the game to show that it's actually responding to you, the player, who's interacting with it. But additionally, you'd also probably expect there to be a subtle sound effect. and that's obvious on a button, but is it obvious when you get a pop-up notification in the bottom left hand of the screen to let you know that you've gained a Grail experience? And how does that sound in comparison to a tutorial notification that pops up? And what happens when you save the game? What happens when you close a UI window? There's loads and loads of things, and like UI actually, I think sound effects is cursed by if you do a really good job, no one notices it. No one notices it, and that's ideal. I think you only really notice it if it's doing something wrong. So at the minute, it's not quite even, and there's a lot of variety of instruments involved. I think you've done a really good job. I don't want to be mean about it. I really do, and you're much better at this than I am. It's just the person, it's in the business, on the business. Again, it's the person who hasn't done it. It's like, ooh, that's quite unusual. But I couldn't do it, so I'm not.
So we will get somebody. We'll get a grown up to go back through my my efforts and tidy them up and add entirely new sounds. I do like the frequency shifted kalimba that accompanies.
That's your hill.
The alerts. That's
my
hill. That's my hill.
We can keep the frequency.
I think it's hard to identify, and it sounds subtle. But I think somebody who actually knows anything about audio could do.
You have
do
acted
better.
with whimsy. What was the name of Picasso's owl?
I thought I did. Ubu. Ubu. I did briefly consider the actually having one different sound effect for acting with each passion.
Oh, no.
And then I sobered up.
Well, we were talking, weren't we, earlier when we were in a slightly hysterical state after all this, well, we're going to be sued by Sony business, that we should replace the sound effect that plays when you complete a plan in your journal with a recording of one of us, presumably Alexis, saying,
"Updated my journal."
Which, if you have played Planescape Torment, will hopefully make your heart skip a beat. But we're not going to do that because presumably whoever owns the rights to Planescape will sue us. I don't think
proper fair use is.
Well, if we recorded ourselves saying it, they can't copyright a sentence.
Exactly. But I think that would
slightly break the immersion.
I think one lady said one time that I had a lovely voice for talking books, but
She did.
She did. But where was this, Lottie?
Okay, I have to tell the story now. Okay, so we're married. We're a two-person team, and we happen to be married. But just luck of the draw. And when we were getting married, I don't know what it's like where you live, but where we live, you have to go to your registrar's office and you have to have a private conversation alone with the registrar, each of you, basically to make sure that there's no funny business going on, that no one's being compelled to be married, that nobody's unhappy about it, that you're not related or like something weird. So
we're not related.
I politely allow Alexis to go first, and I politely wait outside the registrar's office for 10-15 minutes for my turn, and Alexis comes out and I follow in, and it's this lovely registrar lady, I don't know, I would say mid-50s, and I sit down as the blushing bride-to-be and expect, are you related, and what's your age, and can you prove your ID, all this kind of stuff. And there's none of that for about the first 7 minutes of this 10-minute interaction with the registrar about these important legal requirements. The registrar says, "Oh, you're marrying a lovely man, aren't you?" And I'm, obviously, I'm madly in love with Alexis because otherwise I wouldn't be marrying him. So I'm like, "Oh yes, no, he's wonderful." And then she's like, "Oh, he's such a nice man." And then it kind of evolves, and it becomes, "Oh, and hasn't he got lovely hair?" And I'm like, "Yes, he does. His hair is one of his best qualities. Really astonishing hair." And then it becomes, "Oh, and hasn't he got a lovely voice?" At this point, I'm thinking, do I need an intervention? Did something happen? I don't know what's going on, but I'm fairly certain I was the one who was going to marry him, but maybe I have missed the memo on this. And finally, she ends this sort of total paean to this man she's only spoken to for 10 minutes by saying, "Oh, lovely voice. He should do talking books. He'd be lovely at talking books." And he would be, but I was confused.
Perish the thought.
Updated.
I've got a theory. I think what she recognised was that I was clearly marrying out of my league.
Oh yeah.
And so she thought, maybe you were like a male or a bride, and she was just testing to see whether you looked jealous or not. And you did, and that's why she allowed us to get married. Yes.
Well, that's one interpretation. But yes, we're not going to do that, even though it'd be really funny.
Updated my journal.
You actually do a really good job. Do the one that makes men excited.
I don't think that's allowed.
No. The one that says, endure, and in enduring, grow stronger.
I can't do that. No, it's a difference. It's like control tone. It's what's his name? Dark on.
Dark on.
Endure. in enduring grow strong. But I can't get into the voice at all. But it's just.
Yeah, you are better at the Nameless One. Why is that? Yeah. Why? It's weird.
Because I've got scars, Lottie. I know what it is to experience pain.
Right.
I'm dead and yet I live.
Yeah. Well, I'm. What's her name? The sexy angel.
Oh.
Celebrity.
Oh, because thought it was.
Don't say I'm the Irish one.
No,
Ginger Bin. I think I left her in the Prism of Mazes.
Anna.
Yes. No, I'm not a fan.
No,
of
Fall from
Anna.
Grace.
Fall from Grace.
The posh one.
She's welcome. Not the posh one.
She's posh. She's posh than anyone else.
She's a prostitute.
You could she's a prostitute.
Right. Well, we're going to end discussion there. But play Planescape if you haven't.
Yeah, they all have though. Well, they all should have anyway. There's the thing about the demo. Everyone who's played the game so far is somebody who asked for it. And literally filled in a web form and said, "Please, can you send me a key?" The key. Some of them said, "Please send me a key. I've played all your games." Some of them just said something mysterious about ducks or weasels. But they're all people who basically are on a wavelength. So we're going to push this out to the masses of steam. And I don't know how many people are going to be saying, "What's this?" Hairy Windwolf. It's got no combat.
I came across a very...
and you spend 30 minutes just talking to a guy in a cafe and another guy in a cafe, and apparently they're painters, but you never see any paintings.
I came across a very funny Reddit thread the other day. As a developer, one reads comments about one's games with sort of sidelong glance, ready to eject as soon as you see anything unpleasant. But this wasn't unpleasant at all, and it was in a totally unusual place. I am on a number of cozy gaming subreddits, partly because I like a bit of cozy gaming every now and then. I wouldn't describe myself as a cozy gamer, but every so often I'm tempted. But also because Book of Hours, back in the day, I was wondering if we could position it in marketing terms.
Yeah, sorry about
as
that.
Basically a cozy game, but that was really difficult because a lot of the cozy game tradition is that there's very little actual challenge. The whole point of a lot of cozy games is to sort of be calming and not stressful and help people unwind and all this kind of stuff. Whereas Book of Hours, I thought, well, there's no actual kind of death condition, so maybe we could attract... Anyway, that was a total disaster, but it has left me this legacy of these cozy game subreddits. And the community in cozy games are very sweet, very positive, and totally not our core audience at all. But Book of Hours came up in a thread for reasons I won't bore you with, and there were a bunch of people who had played it, and seeing discussion amongst cozy game enthusiasts about what the hey-ho was going on in Book of Hours was so funny. A lot of them were like, I really wanted to like it, but I never got off the beach, and I didn't know what I could do with anything, and I heard that there's a whole game with like rooms, but I have no idea what I'm doing, and it makes me feel stupid. So they were all actually very positive about it. But that was a good example, exactly as you say, of basically the wider world coming into contact with Weather Factory.
I have to say, I spent 2 years living and breathing Cultist Simulator.
Yeah.
And then I spent 4 years living and breathing Book of Hours, which was... the systems were extremely similar to Cultist. And when we initially had people saying, I can't get off the beach, first of all I said, which is true, our first two games were intended to be things that you either you felt rewarded by putting effort into understanding them. I had a fight with our then publisher about not putting a tutorial in, because the whole point about Cultist Simulator is it doesn't have a tutorial.
But that's been very controversial. I can see both sides of it. I totally stand by your decision. But
so can I.
See why people are like, absolutely. Why isn't there a tutorial?
No, I know. And I'm not saying it was anything but a particular decision of preference, given the kind of game I was trying to make. But after sort of literally 6 years of that, all I could see was slots, boxes, and aspects. So when people said, I don't know how to get to the beach, I was thinking, well, it was obvious, that slot's literally got the icons, and you mouse over it, tells you about the icons. So you put the card in there that's got the icons. And I sort of grudgingly realised that, yes, okay, there's quite a lot of stuff on the screen, and you might not realise the two circles at the left are the bits you need to click on, but basically you work it out. And then the specific experience I had, I'm still doing Book of Hours support, although it's an old stable game, so it doesn't need much. And somebody the other day had some particular problem with a crafting recipe, and I loaded up the save in the game, and for a moment it was that exact feeling you get when you go back to playing an MMO after a year away, and all these buttons, you know, any of them do. And there's and it's like, okay, I'll just create what's the which goes in the.
I'm really glad that you had that experience.
Yeah, but it's a game developer can never have too much humility, and most of us don't have enough humility, so that was a useful experience. But, you know, the other side of that is Travelling at Night has got flipping trillions of tutorial windows.
It does, except the word tutorial, it was always asterisked out in all of our Hack and Plan cards because you still can't bring yourself to type it.
I know, but it's literally the messages are called tutorial messages in.
Well, I've given up.
In the code. I know. Well, look, I thought this is.
No, so to make a serious point, one of the reasons we both love CRPGs, right? But one of the reasons that we chose to make Travelling at Night an isometric CRPG is because we really wanted to lean into genre. Both Book of Hours and Cultist Simulator are kind of sui generis, right? Like, they are games unlike any other games. They do their own thing, and for some people that's catnip, because basically give me something I haven't seen before. I'm a gamer. I've played everything on Steam. I'm bored. Everything's a copy of everything else. Wait, what's that indie gem over there that is doing something different, right? So that's, for a small group of people on Steam, that's amazing, and we have a very core. And I'm very grateful for this audience of people who think, wow, Weather Factory do really bizarre stuff I haven't seen elsewhere. But there is, of course, a much larger proportion of the Steam audience who say, I keep hearing about Cultist Simulator, but I have no idea what to do, and it just looks like a card game, and it's not for me. And that's also totally legitimate. So we didn't want to lose the weirdness, the oddity, and the uniqueness of all the games that we have made before, because that's basically our USP, and we're proud of it. But we did think, is there anything we can do to make our games a little bit have a bit more broader appeal without dumbing them down or making them, you know, too generic or anything like that. And what we thought was the answer was genre. So take a genre that people have a bunch of expectations in, like a CRPG. When you say the word CRPG, you're immediately thinking of a bunch of very specific features and UI and whatever. So let's take a genre, let's do that genre, and then let's do something really interesting with that genre that people haven't seen before, but within the genre space. And I think as part of that evolution, you are saying, okay, I'm not going to have a little pixie that's animated at the start that says, hello, I'm the tutorial fairy, click over here to get your 3 gold, which you and I both find excruciating and would not be Weather Factory. But what you are recognising is, okay, and this is a nice thing that you've done, for example, right at the start of the game, the first thing you ever see, Spencer stands in the rain outside of the Gare d'Antibes, right? That's the very first thing you see in the game after going through the main menu and the character creation screen. And if you stand there like a dope, because you don't know what you're doing, a message pops up that says, bing, click anywhere and Spencer will run. And so, great, that's great. But if you are like me, and probably the majority of our player base, you know quite clearly that in a dialogue-driven CRPG, you click to run. So people will click and run, in which case you get a different message that goes, bing, click to, oh, you know what you're doing, I'll leave you alone. Which is a really nice touch, right? Because what it says is, the wider group of people who maybe have never played a CRPG before, and there will be loads of those people, if only because they're 15 rather than 50, they get the help that they need to enjoy the game. It doesn't patronise them, also, you know, look in the tunk for the story, but it does facilitate them. But equally, other people who are super CRPG aficionados or people who don't want the helping hand are also considered. And I think that's a really nice balance that you've struck.
I hope so, and thank you. But the other thing that sold it to me, honestly, was I couldn't control myself. So some of the systems are sort of clearly CRPG systems, but, you know, our skills are called things that aren't herbalism or parry. And
I still mourn the loss of Legerdemont. Yeah,
but it was we had to widen it to stagecraft and other things. Yeah, I couldn't control myself. So the skills are skill systems, but with odd names, and the passions work the other way around, rather than you get passions when you do certain kinds of thing. You level up the passions you want, and then you get rewarded for doing certain kinds of thing. And the aspect pool is a bit different, and the crafting is a level more complex than you normally see. And by the standards of, you know, Book of Hours, it's pretty straightforward. But if you have come into the game expecting a CRPG, I've explicitly tried to make the game to be accessible and interesting to people who are used to more mainstream CRPGs, or also, you know, third generation CRPGs like Disco, is I didn't want to confuse them needlessly. So you get a smattering of helpful comments. And again, when we're about to release, I'll probably go back again and have to do a bit more work on the UI and say, actually, that fucking socket, pardon my French, lights up. Click on the socket, the one that's lit up. We won't let you advance
that's
until
what
then.
I think
but for now, the tutorial windows
the demo,
carry the load.
Because, as you said, the current beta player base have been people who, broadly speaking, know what Weather Factory games are and know what to expect, and therefore kind of like the challenge.
When you say beta player base, it sounds really rude. It sounds like
I don't
they're
mean
not
like
seamless.
that, because not all of us are terminally online. But with the demo, we'll get any Tom, Dick or Harry who'll be playing it, and presumably some of them will be like, what is going on? I don't like it. But you say this, CRPGs, apart from the fact of all the genre stuff I was talking about earlier and how that establishes a bunch of expectations that I think is very helpful in terms of communicating dev to player, I think what we should do is do a bundle with Wrath of the Righteous, because anybody who's played Wrath of the Righteous will roll into our game and be like, this is baby, this is easy. Wrath of the Righteous was possibly the most confusing game experience I've ever had, and don't get me wrong, I loved it, I really enjoyed it, well, until they had the whole Crusader mode thing, but less said about that the better, but really enjoyed it. But very clearly they had the same quandary we do, which is that half of their player base are proper D&D aficionados, CRPG specialists, who want to twiddle every dial and have total control over this incredibly complex skill system, character system, like whatever system. Every possible thing that you can say has connection to a system, there is some toggle for it that you can control. Or, for everybody else in the world, there's a button that says, do this for me. And there's a button for that at the start when you make your character. There's a button for that every time you level up. Just put the points in a sensible position for me, computer. Click. And it really makes it playable to a huge variety of people, which I really respect, because I think it's a difficult thing to do, to please
I
both,
agree. I think
both extremes.
I looked over your shoulder, you're playing it, and the UI work in there is exceptional, the onboarding work. No, I just worry, and it is what it is, and it's going to be...
Well, this is why we're putting the demo out.
This is why we're putting the demo out, but I think, there are people who really like crunchy specific systems, and there are people who like the idea of wandering around an alternate 1940s French city, talking to the parish priest, and there's clearly an overlap between the two. I just don't know how big the overlap is. So what I've done is alienate the first people by not putting any combat, and then alienate the second group of people by making the systems too complicated.
I think you've done a really nice job.
Well,
and I think the rest of the job is marketing. One of the big mistakes you can make in marketing, as I always say, is misrepresenting the game to the player. Now, that can be pretending that it's a better made game than it is, by having, paying someone else to make a 20 grand trailer for you to make it look really shiny when actually they play it and it looks like Pac-Man. Another way of making that mistake is by saying, this is going to be very hand-holdy, don't worry, we'll tell you everything to do, and then launching you into Culture Simulator. That would be a bad thing to do too. But
Psych.
But your job as a designer is to try and balance these very difficult things, and I really think that you've done a really good job of it. And now it's over to me to make sure that people going into this know that it is a CRPG, and that means they can bring certain expectations, but we are breaking it in certain other ways. And we'll see. This is an experiment. We might find that this doesn't work, but I have a good feeling about it.
Well, that's really encouraging to hear. Thank you, my darling.
Shall we wrap it up there?
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should. I need to go and eat crisps.
It's vitally important that we deplete the amount of crisps in this house, but not too much because I'm cooking dinner.
Oh, yeah.
So, with that, we're having beef burritos. So if anyone else listening to this is having beef burritos or considering what to have for dinner tonight on a Monday, have beef burritos. They're totally delicious. Unless you're vegetarian, in which case don't, and I respect you. But otherwise... You
can have pleef.
Corn burritos.
Corned beef should be, but it isn't, is it? It's confusing.
Have a lovely dinner tonight, whatever your decision.
Have a spooky dinner.